Before we begin, I wanted to give a huge shout out to the folks at Amazon Music for partnering with us on this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. But more on this later. Right then, let's get right into today's episode. So, since Formula One is doing something different this time, I think we should do something different with the intro as well. Sundaram, you had a stat. What's the kicker?
Yes, indeed. So usually when we turn up at Imola, people often wonder if the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, if the Formula One MSC Cruises Gran Premio del Mare in Italy e dell'Emilia Romagna is the longest ever race title in Formula One history. It's not. It's not, in fact. So I'm going to have to take you back 74 years, back to 1950, on this very day, actually the 13th of May. You might be hearing this on the 14th of May, but Formula One just celebrated its 74th birthday yesterday. And the inaugural Formula One race had two names. It was called the British Grand Prix. Some even called it the Grand Prix d'Europe. But the official name was the Royal Automobile Club Grand Prix d'Europe, incorporating the British Grand Prix. First race ever, the longest name ever, no one's matched it.
What sort of weird ass stat is that? Like a Grand Prix eating another Grand Prix? Like the European Grand Prix eating up the British Grand Prix? Wait, so what would this technically be? Is this the Made in Italy Emilia Romagna Grand Prix eating up the San Marino Grand Prix? Or what is it now? This has never had a proper name though, has it, Kunal? I've never seen this with a proper name. Like they couldn't call it the Imola Grand Prix like it's meant to be. It's always San Marino or Made in Italy or whatever it might be.
Like Sundaram said, made in Italy sounds like it's cheese that they need to claim it's made in Italy, right? I was wondering which one of his punchlines is he going to use? And of course, he had a better stat. So I said, okay, I can just reuse the other punchline and give him the credit for thinking of it. But I think we've had Italian Grand Prix, San Marino Grand Prix, Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, various names to it. I actually can't just read beyond MSC Emilia Romagna Grand Prix because this was where Michael Schumacher had his first pole position with Ferrari. So MSC, and just call it the MSC Grand Prix like I care, for all I care. But since Sundaram has started off with a stat, I'm going to throw a stat out as well. Again, it goes back in time. Of course, not as back as 1950, but Nico Hülkenberg, right, who is a very, very experienced driver, has over 200 Grand Prix to his name, is moving to Audi, blah, 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 has raced in several categories, raced across seasons since 2010, all of that. But he has never raced in Imola, ever, in any category. Can you imagine?
You're right.
And this is an old school circuit. It's an old circuit. It's not Jeddah, if you know what I mean. I was stunned when I read this. I was like, wow, Nico Hülkenberg has never raced in Imola.
I remember David Coulthard, when he was testing the new Formula E Gen 3 car, said that I'm not a virgin at many things and I love new experiences in that regard. We have a competitor to David Coulthard now driving the Formula E Gen 3 car. It's Hülkenberg at Imola, believe it or not. What? Oh my God. Can you imagine being at whatever age he is and getting to drive at Imola for the first time in your life? Like, that is an experience you save up in your life. That's quite something.
And we've also, 4 minutes in, saved up the best. We've delivered our best punchlines yet in the first 4 minutes. Why don't you just give us an introduction?
Hold on. Let me throw in two more.
Introduction, better wait. Yes.
Yes. So Nico Hülkenberg did not win the Miami Grand Prix. So that meant he started 209 races, the most by any driver in Formula One without taking a race win. This is probably a little bit more popular. But Nico Hülkenberg is actually the only driver to move to another Formula One team after driving for Haas. He's the only driver.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
You're right. Yeah.
Esteban Gutierrez, he did move to Mercedes, but then obviously didn't drive for them. Romain Grosjean is still waiting to drive that Mercedes car. Kevin Magnussen is here for the time being. And Nikita Mazepin, Mick Schumacher. Mick might make it to Alpine next year. Those are the rumors. But yes, for now, it's Nico Hülkenberg,
And then Kevin,
who has a future after driving for Haas.
Kevin Magnussen is going to be joining the FIA community service team as well for his one race ban that's going to be coming up.
Can you imagine?
Surely that's going to happen as well.
Yeah. So Oliver Behrman, let's put a bet on this. Oliver Behrman could race for 2 different teams in Formula One this year. He's of course done Ferrari, and then he might just get to do Haas.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, let's add context. Kevin Magnussen has picked up more penalty points than championship points in literally the last 2 races. He's at 10 out of a possible maximum of 12, right?
12.
And he's of course been, he's going to fight not just for his seat at Haas, but he's going to fight for Haas and fight not to get penalty points. And clearly the easiest way to do it would be just to qualify ahead of Nico Hülkenberg and then make sure Hülkenberg is never ahead so Kevin doesn't have to have those defensive games. But I think Kevin's also had 3 Q1 exits on the trot in the last 3 races. So lots up and against him and so on. But
You're not getting the point. The whole point of racing in Formula One, if you're Kevin Magnussen, is to push people off the track. What's the point of driving a clean and boring race? Come on, understand. There's no fun in that stuff.
And why don't we just introduce ourselves? Somil, go for it.
Yes, let's do that.
We should. By the way, folks, this is the Inside Line F1 podcast, which is basically the Carlos Sainz fan club, unofficially. Again, I've just declared it for all of us. But no, generally, we have been talking about Formula One for ages, but we still come up with the same excitement for Imola because that's the kind of circuit it is. My name is Somil Arora. I'm the voice of the MotoGP Indian Grand Prix, which seems like it won't be lasting for too long, unfortunately. That's one thing. I don't know, we might go to God knows what, Kazakhstan or whatever it might be. But that's my phone ringing. Why don't you do the introduction otherwise, Sundaram?
That's my phone ringing as well.
Incredible.
Sorry.
Maybe I should say that's my phone that's supposed to be ringing but hasn't. And so we've also got F1 Stats Guru, who is one of our esteemed co-hosts, one of the most engaged stats page on the internet, on Instagram. I don't know why I said internet and Instagram. I mean, they're clearly 2 different things, but I think a lot of Gen Z probably think Instagram is the internet, right? And my name is Kunal Shah, former marketing head of the Force India Formula One team. One of the better things I did was run the One from a Billion Hunt program, which was a junior driver program. And this is the Inside Line F1 podcast.
Way, nicely done, nicely done. But wait, before we get to the racing, I have a question for you guys. I told you before the episode I would test you. But here goes. Here's a special San Marino stat now that we're in. Are we in San Marino? At least what we used to claim as San Marino. Do you know what the craziest, or rather according to you guys, what's the craziest title the head of a government can get? Chancellor, Supreme Leader, or what do you guys think?
Supreme Leader.
Supreme Leader. I see what you did there. What about you, Kunal? What would you have as your title if you were a dictator or something?
Wow. I just dictator. Yeah.
Dictator, yeah. You could be the captain's regent in San Marino, which is what I think they should just call the race winner as well, right? It's the captain's regent, the one who's won the Grand Prix. That's a cool name to have.
Just that, like Sundaram pointed out, the San Marino Grand Prix was never held in San Marino. It was always held in the neighboring state of Imola, right? Is neighboring state, neighboring country? What was it? My geography is bad.
San Marino is a country within Italy. And the race has never been held in San Marino. So it's supposedly the 5th smallest country in the world. And Imola is in a different city altogether. But yeah, the race was called San Marino Grand Prix for several years, but never held there.
Sure.
It's almost as if the Italians went, what do we name our track? We're checking, and they forgot about it. They turned up on race day and they said, yeah, let's call it San Marino. Let's call it Emilia Romagna. Let's call it whatever hell we want to call it.
MSC Grand Prix, remember? MSC Grand Prix.
MSC Grand Prix, yeah. I see. Because they were more busy actually designing a good race circuit. And that's what, again, we all have been talking about so much in the preparation. Even though there are so many big stories to talk about, like 2 major members of Mercedes' staff jumping ship to Ferrari, including a former F1 driver who you might have forgotten, by the way. But the bigger picture here is Jonathan Wheatley potentially leaving Red Bull. We're not talking about that. A low degradation circuit, we'll get to that in a bit. But the beauty of Imola and the beauty of the circuit is what always comes up to the top of it all. And Sundaram, you put it so well in the preview, right, when we were discussing it. Not Adrian Newey, what am I saying? What is the name of that guy? Herman Tilke would have never designed this circuit in his wildest dreams because the way it flows, the way the corners come into each other, and then that middle sector, when you go from that left-handed hairpin straight down, that section is chef's kiss. That's what the Italians do, right? It's spettacular.
Indeed. I mean, although the names may not be the greatest, but I think Italy knows how to build a great racetrack, be it Monza, be it Mugello. I think I totally loved Mugello when we had that in 2020. Why not? Why don't we go back to that track more often? We're going to Chicago supposedly, but I would love to have Mugello on the track. More classic circuits. It does not scream Herman Tilke at all, but it's a classic track. It's fast flowing, very narrow. Overtaking is going to be very difficult, which makes qualifying even more important. No one's won from outside the top 5 positions at Imola, and 19 of the 30 races at Imola have been won from the front row. So qualifying is going to be super, super important. Is Lando Norris going to qualify on the front row? He definitely had the pace in Miami. I mean, if I'm not wrong, he set the fastest lap in Miami on a set of mediums, and he went slower on a set of softs. So they're actually going a step softer for Imola this time compared to Miami, but I think they set up really, really well this weekend.
But talking of Lando Norris, we're going to have 12 race winners on the grid. Can you name all of them? Come on.
Here goes. Ocon, Norris, Gasly, that's 3. Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, that's 6. Valtteri Bottas would be 7. We would have Charles Leclerc, 8. Carlos Sainz, 9. 3 other people in other small cars.
Russell. Ricardo.
Hey, Stats Guru, come on. What are you doing, man?
Ricardo.
2 more. Yeah. 11. And then who are the two others? No, 1 more. Oh, goodness. Is it?
You actually counted from the back. I start from the very front.
Who did we miss?
Who did?
It's not
there's
Piastri.
a line from... It's not Piastri.
Alonso.
Did we say Fernando?
Oh, no.
Did we say Fernando? You missed Fernando? Seriously?
No,
Yes.
Sorry. I recency bias. He got out-qualified by his teammate, so I tended to focus more on him. So, again... I tend to appreciate modern performance. Like all the drivers say, right? Every race in this championship is like your last, and the one that you just did matters the most. That's what it's all about. Lance Stroll, better legacy than Fernando Alonso.
But I think that's a brilliant stat. 12 race winners on the grid. But coming back to Lando Norris, and if I'm not wrong, I might have to go back and check this once again, but Lando Norris took 110 races to win his first Grand Prix. That's the most any driver has raced for with one team before winning their maiden race. So a lot of loyalty being shown both sides, both ways. But surely when he turned up at McLaren, they were not in the best shape. Just coming off the McLaren Renault days, but 110 races. And he's finally gone from Lando no wins to 1 win.
Yeah, and Lando no win. Actually, there's a very interesting post-race insight. Someone was on mute. I just took the step on the inside and I said, I'm going to take it. Lando Norris was actually thinking of what to say post-race on the radio. There goes Samuel, right? Okay, there we go. Samuel Aurora's recording setup is like Sauber, the most inconsistent.
I never even touched the thing.
All he needs is to breathe heavily. Something will go, and then
Again,
Anyway, Lando Norris, where was I? No wins. He was thinking of what to say. And can you imagine, he thought of Valtteri Bottas's to whomsoever it may concern, whatever he was going to say, right? And he actually thought, that's the imprint in Lando Norris's memory. Valtteri Bottas's post-race race win, which we probably haven't heard since, 2019 or whatever he last time didn't win. Like, that's in Lando Norris's head, that I need to say something. And he suddenly realized, oh my God, Lando's is copyrighted. So he said, Lando no wins. Right. I'm glad, thanks to Valtteri Bottas, we had Lando no wins.
But no, generally, it's such a story, right? Because now that he's finally claimed that one big win with McLaren, the monkey's off the back. But there is a genuine question to ask. McLaren and their pace in Miami, how genuine was it? And I know it gives a lot of British GP 2023 vibes where we saw McLaren come up with a big upgrade and suddenly the entire hype train was behind them and the train ended up reaching the stop and then beyond. But the point is, there is genuine hope because, as you mentioned, Kunal, before the build up to the episode, Verstappen apparently didn't even try matching the lap times, right? What was exactly that code all about?
He said, "Oh, when I heard the times he was doing, I just didn't bother. I just settled in and wanted to claim second place." This is Max Verstappen, not me saying it, for all our Dutch listeners, although zillions of Max Verstappen fans who listen in. And, Lando Norris's win was on merit. Of course, a safety car helped him, and we've sort of, gone deeper into that. The big question this weekend for me is going to be not who's the second fastest, because last couple of races, has it been McLaren or has it been Ferrari who are battling in P2 alongside Red Bull? But this is the first European Grand Prix of the season, which typically has always been Barcelona for me, but everything is changing under Liberty Media, right? So this is the first European Grand Prix of the season. I think every team is going to bring a plethora of upgrades on Thursday when they declare all their upgrades documents, which we will share on our social media. It's going to be like multiple pages per team. Any team that says no upgrades, I probably think they're going to lie, although they can't, right? But back to my point, every team is going to bring upgrades. Red Bull is expecting upgrades. McLaren already brought their upgrades. They're going to bring the other balance 50% for Oscar. Ferrari and Charles Leclerc were mystical in saying when their upgrades are coming, but it's a home race for them. So I'm presuming they will also want to bring upgrades here, right? So will the pecking order change throughout the grid? That's the question. We're going back to the traditional FP1 to 3 format, which means more time for teams to dial in the setup and so on. And if the pecking order changes, at the moment, we don't know who the fastest is. It's easy to say it's Max and Red Bull because that's our recency bias as well. And of course, that's the strongest package, right? But the last two sprint weekends, they weren't really comfortable. They got challenged and you saw what happened eventually in Miami, right? So if McLaren's package, if they have more time to extract more performance with 3 sessions, is McLaren now the quickest car, or is it Red Bull there, or will Ferrari's new 4/10 every time Ferrari just talks of the word package, suddenly a 3 or 4/10 is a number that drops from nowhere, right? So we don't know who's the fastest, and whoever's not the fastest will then be the second fastest, clearly, right?
And well, hey, wait, is that a tribute to Xavi? Xavi Padros, Leclerc's race engineer, who's now moved into a different role. Leclerc, well, Charles. Actually, what was that exact radio? I think Leclerc said, Xavi, where would we eventually rank up if we stay out or something like that? First, if you stay ahead of Bottas. Precisely. That's because that's exactly where you were. Good tribute right there. But no.
He's going to get replaced, right?
Was it replaced? Was it internal restructuring?
It's an internal restructuring. He's taking on some other projects, but they haven't told him what, which is that same question mark that Ferrari has on everything they do.
Precisely.
Right?
No, but the point on this whole thing being lower degradation compared to any of the circuits we've recently been to. And that's been a genuine problem for so many teams, understanding that as well, because largely if you look at all the issues that Verstappen has had, or anyone for that matter, it's all been down to lack of grip. To the point where in Miami, I don't think anyone was able to actually figure out what the grip was like. You listen to every one of their post-race interviews. Oh, there was no grip here, no grip there. I couldn't understand the tires, couldn't understand the heat. So now we're at the stage where it's going to be more certain, certainly colder as well, which could play into the hands of a few teams. Notably, Mercedes, who self-admittedly claim that in cooler temperatures, they do perform better. So where do they stack up? How close or how far are they? Is also going to be a genuine question, Sundaram.
Oh, absolutely. Because Mercedes also came with one half of their upgrades last time out in Miami. And although I think Lewis Hamilton, qualified, I think he got knocked out in Q2, right? In sprint qualifying. Yeah, but they're coming up with more upgrades this week. But for some reason, they sound very positive. And also probably because the next couple of races, we have a few races which are not as fast, Monaco and a few other tracks as well. So they seem that the car is expected to perform more as per expectation. It's not going to be a lot more variable. And like you said, cooler temperatures. They did pretty well in Bahrain as well, at least in qualifying or in the free practice sessions. So you might see a lot of teams converging, being a lot closer, especially when they come with upgrades. But in the same way, I'm also thinking if drivers are going to go the other way, because when you start bringing
Yeah.
upgrades, one driver tends to like it more than the other, especially with Sergio Perez or Valtteri Bottas, especially when they were in these leading cars, they would do well for the first 5 races. You hit Barcelona, they come with new upgrades, and it goes in a completely different direction. So that's also something that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on Sergio Perez, because he's finished within the top 5 in every single race this season so far. That's going to be a very interesting thing to look at.
That's a great point. Adaptability is going to be key with these upgrades coming in. And, some drivers just drive around problems like Fernando Alonso spoke of. Some drivers just take longer to settle in as well. They need to work harder. So that's going to be fun to, see who goes where. But if I can throw another, it's, 20 minutes in, here's another really strange stat. Imola, which if you guys remember last year, we didn't have the race because of the floods that had happened. We reached there on Wednesday and then the race got cancelled. It's actually the birthplace of Stefano Domenicali, the current CEO of Formula One. So that's one stat. The second stat I wanted to throw, which is actually a depressing stat. Sorry, it's a heavy word, but I'm going to just throw it there. In the hybrid turbo era, this is only the third time a customer team has won a race in Formula One. You guys want to guess the other two?
Gasly in Monza. And the
That's
other
correct.
one must be not Oak.
Since Sundaram was talking of Sergio Perez, it came to my mind. It was Perez in the Racing Point in Bahrain, but at the Sakir Grand Prix, as we used to call it then.
Yeah.
But we also had Danny.
Yeah.
We also had Danny in 21.
So then it's the fourth time.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
So McLaren are the only team apart from the big three. I mean, not just customer team. I would say the only team apart from the big three to win 2 races in the hybrid era.
Yeah.
So Racing Point has won 1, Alpine has won, AlphaTauri has won. So McLaren is the only team to do it twice.
And guess what? Oscar Piastri, who's going to get 50% of the faster car this race, is the only Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari driver to have not stepped onto the podium yet. So that's additional pressure. That's additional whatever he's taken upon himself to race here. But back to the circuit, COVID-19, of course, was this big thing, right? That happened in the world. Luckily, it's gone away. But I think the biggest gift that COVID-19 could give Formula One was this circuit coming back on the calendar, because this circuit was out of favor for all the other Middle Eastern oil paying whatever, circuits that were there. But because COVID-19 happened and it was in Europe and they could race within the bubble, that actually worked for them. And luckily, at the moment, nobody's complaining why we have 2 races in Italy, even though a 4th race in America, in Chicago, was actually rumored and then taken back and all of that as well. But I also believe this weekend, one of the news stories that I will want to look out for is what Formula One says against the US Congress's letter against Andretti Cadillac not getting entry into the sport. Very, very interesting situation. I'm sure Formula One would have probably seen something like this coming, but look at Andretti. They realize we need to get political if we have to. If F1 is getting political, we will use politics as a tool to get ourselves a spot.
The Fed is involved.
Wow.
The Fed. The old 60-year-olds with pot bellies who wear big black suits and have proper black sunglasses and will have 4 bodyguards with them who spy into every detail of your phone are now involved in the running of Formula One indirectly in some way. How? What?
And very interesting choice of words in the letter of the Feds, or not the Feds, the US Congress.
Fed,
I don't know if there's a difference there. Sorry. They say, we request information about Formula One's decision to block the partnership between Andretti Global and General Motors in Formula One, blah, blah, blah. And if they're not given entry, maybe the entire Formula One model may be broken. Okay. And delaying this entry for even 1 year will harm the American consumers to benefit the Formula One.
Did they just mention the benefit to the American consumer in the country that has the most unhealthy fast food and grocery options in the world? Are you talking about protecting the American consumer, are you, my friend? They
My
don't need.
goodness.
They need protection from you.
Yes.
I don't know, man.
Sawmill's unleashing his wrath.
Yeah. Sawmill is on his plant-based rap right now, saying rap literally you could be eating. Since this is an audio, you don't know if he's actually eating. You can switch to the video format on YouTube. Okay, but on that note, of course, 30 years since Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna lost their lives on track at Imola again. And of course, I grew up to Tamburello in my head. It's always one of those corners that you think of. But we will see a tribute. Lots of drivers, I think Pierre Gasly has a tribute helmet. I'm pretty sure organizers, Formula One themselves, and some drivers' teams in their own capacities will, have their own tributes in their own way. But Sebastian Vettel is actually making his comeback to Formula One to drive one of the historic Ayrton Senna. I think it's the MP48 that he's driving. He's going to do a few laps around the circuit. And I'm pretty sure when he does those laps, the first thing that everyone will feel along with the emotion is the grunt of the engine and be like, those are those engines we should be racing on. Those were the days. That's the sound. That's the grunt. That's the ferociousness that we should have been racing in Formula One.
Interesting choice of car. Of course, Ayrton won his last Formula One race with that car. But they retired. Both McLarens retired from the San Marino Grand Prix that season. But it's a little ironic because, of course, whenever you talk about Imola, you obviously think of Ratzenberger, you think of Senna. People mostly remember Senna from Monaco, but Senna had 8 pole positions at Imola, one also in his final race weekend. And 7 of those were consecutive, which is the world record. He had 7 consecutive poles at this very track. He was dominant here. He had, if I'm not wrong, 3 race wins. And Michael Schumacher was the most successful in terms of race wins, at least. But yeah, a track that he completely dominated was where he eventually ended his life. So yeah.
And that just shows you how much of a driver's circuit this is, which is why qualifying in my head is going to be the best session to watch in the entire weekend. For a good reason. If it doesn't rain in the main race, we've seen it before that Imola can be, without a doubt, without mincing my words, the hardest place in the world to pass. Like, where will you go? George Russell had an idea.
It is statistically, it is, I believe so.
Exactly. And the numbers do back it up. In fact, we even have one concrete piece of evidence from 2021 where George Russell thought, okay, if there's no space on the tarmac, I'll go to the outside. And that clearly did not work out as well, according to their plans. And he collided with Valtteri Bottas eventually. But the point being, if it's not wet, it could genuinely be a very strategy-based race, which is, again, entertaining for some, not so much for the others, which is where it puts the pressure back on qualifying. And remember, the last time we didn't have a sprint weekend, Sergio Perez was only 0.06 of a second behind Max Verstappen in qualifying. That was a close gap. And the field was as bunched up as it could ever be, to the point where we had the Alpines also move up to Q2, if I'm not mistaken. There was some sort of volatility there. So generally, qualifying with the upgrades is going to be a banger session. Don't miss Saturday. Seriously. And it's going to be traffic paradise as well. Remember, this is where this actual term got birthed in the first place.
And the toe, classic toe. That's going to be another thing to look out for, because it's going to be pretty, it's a very high-speed circuit, 345 plus kilometers per hour is what they're going to reach. But since we're talking of qualifying, you guys have already mentioned track position is vital. One key bold overtaking place will be the first chicane in itself. Again, very narrow, very tight, very fun. The opening lap is, of course, exciting, but I'm going to just throw out some qualifying stats. A very interesting trends coming up. So, of course, the easy ones, Zhou Guanyu and Logan Sargent have not gotten out of Q1 yet. Okay. Max Verstappen is unbeaten in qualifying. As we know, I think if he gets it, he's going to tie a record with me, Alan Prost, for 8 consecutive pole positions. I believe so. But the driver to watch out for is actually Yuki Tsunoda. Every time a driver from the top 5 has actually not made it to Q3, Yuki Tsunoda has the one who's benefited from it. And after finishing 7th in Miami, Yuki Tsunoda is now ahead of Lance Stroll in the Drivers' Championship. Right? Clap, clap.
Aston Martin have figured their number
Yeah.
two
Oh
driver
no,
for
but
2026.
no, genuinely, guys, is there any validity in that quote about Yuki Tsunoda saying Honda might support me in? Like, do you guys sense?
It's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious because I think Honda does pay a huge amount to Red Bull for having Yuki in Formula One. They also put a lot of money in him having that seat as well at Alpha Tauri Alpha Tauri. So there's a lot of interest in having him in the sport, and of course they would be looking to have him in the second seat alongside Alonso or even beyond that, 27 and so on. So it all depends on what Lance Stroll
Yeah,
wants to do. Just like the whole driver market depends on what Adrian Newey wants to do, what happens at Aston Martin depends on what Lance Stroll, what's his mood like.
It could be a good weekend for him to announce something, right? Because it's his 150th race in Formula One this weekend. Can you imagine? That driver's done 150 races already.
That would be that would be more
Yeah.
than which other drivers?
He's made it to Q3 just 2 times this season. 2 times in 6 races. And more than, I don't know, Nikita Mazepin, more than Mick Schumacher. There you go.
I will find that number out because it fascinates me. Because in context,
Right.
Let's just put it out there, right? Lance Stroll has basically now done almost half. Actually, what? Only 111 or 100 and something odd starts less than Sergio Perez, who has 263. And that blows my mind. So that's what 113 more starts only Sergio Perez has.
Incredible.
That's a lot of disrespect for the second youngest podium finisher in Formula One, isn't it?
Come on. But you were saying something.
Moving on to the oldest one. Yeah. Moving on. Nico Hülkenberg has been 9th in 2 races, right, out of 6. But it gets interesting. Alexander Albon has been 14th for 3 races. Stroll has been 11th for 2 races. The reason why I'm saying all this, and I said this even in the last preview, was how close it is in qualifying and how teams are no longer saying tenths. They're literally in the press release saying thousandths is what's, the difference between being 9th or being 14th, right? Oscar Piastri, he's been 6th in 3 races out of 6. So you can imagine in the whole battle between Aston, Mercedes, Ferrari, whatever, Oscar is hitting that middle block where he's 6th. So he's not higher than that. Of course, he can be higher, but that's pretty much where he's falling. Fernando Alonso was out of place in Miami. He was 15th. So, he probably took that Lance is my hero very seriously by being out of place on the negative side of things. Valtteri Bottas, he's been 16th 3 races, right? And he's been 13th 2 races. So you can see the difference. When he really gets it going, he's in Q3. When he's sort of there, he's 13th. When he doesn't get it there, he's out Q1 16th, right? So that's how close it is across the grid, which actually leads us into something else we wanted to discuss. Guys, should we give points to all the 20 drivers in a race?
Who's going to disagree first? Go, Sami.
My point is, you don't give an award to everyone who's nominated. You don't give the championship belt to everyone who fights. You don't give free food to... No, you do give free food to everyone. That's just a nice thing to do. But
there's no free lunch, but okay.
But it's not a buffet. It's not meant to be one. You have to fight. It is Drive to Survive for a reason. And I know I hate what I just said. Sometimes you have to. But the whole point being, if you were given points for free in Formula One, I know that would alter the financial structure and the super license points and the revenue and awards and everything else so that it becomes more equitable accordingly. So each point weighs less in a way. But the point of it all being, why? Why don't you want there to be an element of missing out, that FOMO, that you haven't quite made it to the points? And that FOMO is basically what competition is all about. The fear of missing out, which is what drives athletes, engineers, and the brightest minds in the sport to be at their very best so that they can be one of the 10 instead of just being given points every single time. I know it's only a psychological thing because ultimately, if everyone is given points, 1 point means less. So those who score more obviously value it a lot more. But the sentiment still remains that everyone is a winner. And if everyone was a winner, and if I wanted to see everyone being a winner, I would go to a children's race where they were doing 100-meter sprints for grade 4. I wouldn't go to watch Formula 1. That's not what the sport is all for.
I think you perfectly summed it up. There's no better explanation to that. But No, but that's the thing. And probably say first come, first serve. You have to be good enough to score points. Not everyone gets points. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of Sergio Perez's turning up back into the Japanese Grand Prix 15 laps down after retiring, fixing the front wing or fixing the rear wing, and turning up and doing laps 15 laps down just because you get a solitary point for coming last. If not 12, maybe 15, but I definitely don't think that everyone who finishes has to
Does
be
does
awarded points.
I
Yeah, I was about
Go
to
for
ask you,
it.
Kunal, what do you think of it? And does even having 12 finishers make any sense to you for points?
I was actually 3 years ago. I was actually saying go back to 8, go back to 6, make it as concise as you can. Like 25 points just blows my brain. Anyway, but it was easier to remember the 10, 8, 6, 4, whatever that we had. Then suddenly it's like, oh, if you finish 6th, how many points do you need? I quickly need to Google it even now. But either way, the point. So Atle Gulbrandsen, who's been on our show a couple of times as a guest. He's the voice of Formula One in Norway, very dear friend. He and I had this great discussion 3 years ago when he said, you know what, give points to everybody. And I'm like, same thing. Are you guys crazy? Why would you do it? You need to fight for it. But exactly, he spun that around to say, if you want them to fight, let them fight for 16th place. Right now, if you're 16th and you're just driving around aimlessly, you're probably just going to be like, what the hell? I'm anyway not going to get the points, right? We saw Magnussen and Stroll fight a couple of races ago for 16th, dead last. We loved it, right? So I'm in this space where if positions out of place are also something that we want to see and we want them to fight for rather than settle, saying, I'm anyway not in the points, let me be out of it. It's like 50% of the drivers will entertain, the other 50 will just give up, saying, hey, nobody's anyway looking, I don't get anything out of it. So but I would add a caveat. You have to be, ideally I would love this, but it certainly just blows Formula One out of proportion. You have to be on the same racing lap as a leader. Now the problem with that is sometimes even the top 6 are not on the same racing lap as a leader. So then is there a dispensation out there? You need to be within 3 laps or whatever of the leader, 1 lap maximum down, something. So you're also giving the bottom grid teams the reason to be quicker if they want to get points. Right now, the challenge is I'm out of the points. I'm 15th. I'll just save on engine mileage. I'll save on whatever else, park the car. So many reasons to not finish a race, not entertain. But could that be the equation that flips it around?
My question on that is, how do you then split up the points? Because in MotoGP, there is a point beyond which everyone just gets a couple of points. It's like 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. So it doesn't incrementally add up to your points value. So essentially, if you're P15, I don't know, how do you split it up? If there's 25 points, it becomes...
You give it to a mathematician. Yeah. I don't care. Give whatever. But you're right. It can't be that Max suddenly gets 100 points for winning because you got to give 1 point to the guy finishing 20th. So they'll have to figure an equitable way to do this.
Which is where the incentives become marginal.
Which is where the fun is. People who pass the law are not the ones writing the law. So I'm happy to say, give everybody the points, but let somebody else figure out how many points to give.
No, but like it doesn't equitably make sense, right? Because if there's points for everyone, P20 gets 1, P19 gets 1, P18, this is like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And suddenly the points delta is so stupid, like to the point where if you're 8th, you're getting, 8 points. But if you're 14th, you're getting 5 or 4 or something in that regard, which is just disproportionate comparatively. So
to me, that's the second challenge. First is, can we all just agree? Because Formula One met a couple of weeks ago and they didn't agree, or they waited to say, why don't we just wait and see how the scenarios pan out? But overall, they've agreed that more points should be awarded than just the top 10. And then let the second stage be where there's a proposal put out. Now, whether it's 100 for winning or 50 or whatever, let them figure it out.
I see.
It's never going there.
Wait, or do you not want it to go there? Because I can imagine your job becomes exponentially harder if there is another point system change.
My job has already become a lot difficult when George Russell won from P1 but not from pole position in Sao Paulo a couple of years ago. So F1 can't make it more difficult, but it's not going to be 50 and 100 for sure. But just my whole point is, if you finish 11th in a race, you've missed out on points just by the very small margin. And it probably gives you that motivation that you have to be good enough to score points. And if everyone gets points, then everyone probably settles. And right now, that's how the divide is. I get the question why it's being popped up in this year, because the top 5, there's a clear divide between the top 5 and the bottom 5. It's fair for 12, the top 12 or the top 15, but it really doesn't make sense if everyone gets a point for this.
Since luckily we are not the ones who are going to make this decision, nor are we getting paid for it. Yeah.
Thankfully.
2 stats before we go. Charles Leclerc, only driver to be in top 4 in all formats of the races this year, right? But his teammate, okay, on Leclerc still, go for it.
Charles Leclerc is also the driver who's qualified in the even starting positions this year. He's always had the dirtier side of the grid.
Wow. Interesting. The lowest being 8th in Japan, I remember. Yeah.
Yes.
His teammate in 2025, Lewis Hamilton, is, I think for the first time in history, never been in the top 5 or top 6 in any of top 5 in the first 6 races of the season. Like he's having a disastrous season. I mean, if this was Lewis's debut season, can you imagine what would be our impression of him?
Yeah.
Ouch. And it'll be Mercedes' 300th race in Formula One this weekend. So that's to look out for. And since we are talking, I think Alexander Albon's 50th race with Williams, Ferrari's 250th podium. I've had this stat for, I don't know when. 250th pole position since...
It's been there for a long
10
time.
races.
Since Las Vegas.
Something. Since Las Vegas. It's been coming all along. And driver market. We'll see what those rumors. I heard a rumor of Zhou Guanyu being of interest to Haas, because Nico's clearly going to leave, at least Nico, right? And the Chinese market, the Chinese sponsors, the Chinese money, will see if they can give Zhou some more time in Formula One.
This is the weirdest crossover. Haas with a Chinese driver.
Yes.
Like, in an age where America banned Huawei, and again, some might claim for good reason. I believe so too. But come on, that's going to be weird. Like, imagine trying to market that when all of your propaganda has been no China and your former president hated them. And then this. Yeah. Okay, interesting. But
your former president who was there at the race last weekend and was Lando Norris's lucky charm.
Hey, nicely done. But no, speaking of driver market, I think it's good to talk about this last point as well, about lots of people moving ship. Now, all of you might have seen the reports of Loic Serra and Jerome D'Ambrosio moving over from Mercedes to Ferrari. And it is a big story in itself, because Jerome D'Ambrosio was touted to be the next Toto Wolff of sorts, deputy team principal at Mercedes. And that's also the title he's going to be picking up now at Ferrari. And Loic Serra was sporting director, if I'm not mistaken, which is, again, a huge role that encompasses a lot of the team's responsibilities on track. So for them to be moving over to Ferrari, yes, it does boost the claim of Ferrari building up a dream team. But honestly, Kunal, losing a sporting director, losing someone as wise as Jerome D'Ambrosio, how big of a move do you... Actually, let's just firstly touch upon the question. How wise is Jerome D'Ambrosio? I have a bit of a story here, but most people think that because he was a bang average Formula One driver doesn't mean that he's a smart racing brain, which I think is rubbish, honestly.
Yeah, look at Oliver Panis. Look at so many of the other former racing car drivers who actually were really good as team bosses, team administrators, whatever you. Alan McNish, sorry, that was the name I was looking for, not Oliver Panis, but okay. Alan McNish was the name I was looking for. I think losing DAM, as we've called him, all his life, Jerome, also Mahindra Formula E racer. That's how we've interacted with him several times, Somil. That will hurt Toto Wolff more than anything else, because he was, sort of looking to see if he could give up the team principal role, and they were trying to see if they were nurturing Jerome into that role. And guess what? While he was being nurtured, his best friend, Frederic Vasseur, came in, swooped in, and then hired Jerome as a deputy team principal of Ferrari. Imagine the lure of Ferrari. He just said, you know what, I'm going to take that, because who knows, given the the speed with which team principals get rotated at Ferrari? Could it be the deputy who gets the key team principal's role at some point? But, the irony here is, Zach Brown said, with the CVs floating around after Adrian's departure, and then Toto Wolff had to say, yeah, lots of Red Bull CVs that are on the market. And then, of course, Jonathan Wheatley is a name that's been discussed for a long, long time, even before the Adrian Newey exit, I would say. But, he clearly didn't know of the CVs from the Mercedes team that were floating around, and two big, heavy signings that Frederick Vasseur has made. And, all of this, I would say, is also with the pull of Lewis Hamilton. People want to work with him. They want to see if they can create something new. And they're like, why don't we try it? And of course, it's Ferrari.
Well, like you said, these are two big signings. So Loic Serra has been actually the performance director at Mercedes ever since they came back to the sport. He's been a part of the team for all the world championships. And taking away a person as huge as him is going to be massive for Mercedes. And also Jerome D'Ambrosio, who's, I think, leading the driver development program in Mercedes. He's now leading the Ferrari Driver Academy. So really, really bad, huge punch for Mercedes this. And that, but I think this is what happens in a battle. You either strengthen yourselves or you try to weaken your opponent. And that's what Ferrari's been doing. Red Bull did that a couple of years ago. And Ferrari is employing the same tactic.
And on that, right, when I got the chance to speak to Dilbagh Gill, team principal of Mahindra Racing Team back in the day.
Former.
Yeah,
there you go. Okay, back in the day.
Back in the day. He mentioned so much about Jerome's racing wisdom. And that was, I wouldn't say one of the major reasons of him being a part of the team, but that was greatly valued about the experience he brings in, not just from Formula One, but from seeing so much of racing, to the point where he got promoted at Venturi as a team principal there immediately after leaving as a driver. He was one of those smart academic type drivers who looks at the environment and really can figure things out. Great people skills, really smart in terms of understanding human dynamics as well, from what I got to see back in the day. And it's great that he's getting that chance to be in that sort of role to carry that program forward. And I'm glad that racing brains are being appreciated, because normally Formula One records are what people look like and be like, terrible driver. No, look at what they've done outside of it, and look at the wisdom they've gained outside of Formula One to then see what they can bring into the human and the racing side of things.
Somal, I think you answered your own question. So just replace Jerome D'Ambrosio with Lance Stroll, and his experience, his people skills is exactly why he's going to be in Formula One for several years.
Deputy team principal under my crack. But why don't we get into predictions? And one of the things, I'm going to just shoot mine first. One of the things I predict we will never see in Formula One is the epic Alonso versus Schumacher battle, which we remember each time we come to Imola, right? Because that was the San Marino Grand Prix when these two giants of the sport battled lap after lap, overtaking, they defended really well. But can you imagine, in today's day and age of Formula One, we would have never seen this. Why? Because we have the wretched DRS, the drag reduction system, where Michael would have just been like, I'm within 1 second, flick that wing open, drive past, and then you're through. Unfortunate. Or they would have played DRS games. I can't imagine one more tool for Michael to play games with. He would have been ruthless.
Exactly.
But on a serious note, I think, despite all of that and hyping up the battle for P1 and all, I think it's going to be Max Verstappen winning by a 25-second margin. He's going to go out there. He's going to show people, I got beaten last race, but this is me stamping my out. Every time he's lost, he's come back with a vengeance. You're going to hear this on every podcast. You're going to hear this every session during the broadcast. That's what's going to happen. And Max is going to be P1.
Yeah.
There's a stat to prove that as well.
There we go.
I've done my homework. So the last three drivers to win a race from a Max Verstappen pole position have never won a race ever again.
Say what?
Sorry. Daniel Ricciardo in Italy 2021, Charles Leclerc back in Austria 2022, and Carlos Sainz more recently in Australia 2024. They've never won a race again. Lando Norris just won from a Max Verstappen pole position, and he's not going to take it lightly. So I expect Max Verstappen to win once again in Imola, maybe with 25 seconds, maybe with 30 seconds. But yeah, he's going to be back at the top.
Yeah, expected, which is why
No, one sec. Someone, 1 second, please. You were going to say Carlos Sainz is going to win. Now that you have that stat, you're like, shit, I can't say that. Just admit it.
You actually read my mind, which is why I was going to say, literally word for word, which is why I'm going to say Carlos Sainz is second. That is precisely, you know me too well. You know me too well.
Yeah, so 300 plus episodes with you guys, clearly all those, inside line pit stops we've hosted and done. But I'm gonna add something more. Carlos Sainz Senior is signed with Ford, and suddenly from being linked with Audi, Carlos Sainz Jr. is linked with Red Bull Ford, Red Bull Powertrains, whatever you call it, from 2026. Isn't it already Red Bull Powertrains now? Or I don't know, whatever, yeah. But that's going to be interesting on the driver market. Suddenly from asking him about Audi a couple of races ago, they're going to say, oh, by the way, now why don't we just speak about Red Bull Ford and see where that goes. So Carlos Sainz is going to be the big hotshot of the driver market chat this weekend.
Let's see.
I would love to ask the prediction for not pole position, because obviously Max Verstappen's goal last year was to win as many races. This year his goal is to take as many pole positions, and next year probably podiums and fastest laps and so on year after year. But let's have predictions around who finishes on the front row apart from maybe Max Verstappen.
I like that one. I think I'm going to go Charles Leclerc second in qualifying. He's got a track record here. He's quite good. And at least in qualifying, he's a better driver than Carlos from what we've seen in the last few years. So
I would go with...
I'm going with Leclerc as well.
I would go with Lando Norris. That whole excitement, momentum, confidence. The McLaren actually did well in Miami high-speed circuit again. Different sort of high speed, more straights and whatever. But yeah, either way, I think I'm going to go with McLaren. But yeah, I think McLaren is where I'm going to go. Yeah. Mercedes will find some new excuse for not being there, I would say. But let's see.
So, one more prediction, sorry.
Hey, you didn't mention yours.
It's Daniel Ricciardo.
Oh, yeah.
I said Leclerc. One more prediction. I know Danny Rick has been having a couple of exciting races, very good races. Is he going to score points? Or is he going to make it to Q3?
No, I think it's going to be Tsunoda in Q3.
I think we all forgot that it's also... RB's home race this week.
Yeah.
So will they score points, or will they have a Q3 appearance? You say Tsunoda.
I'd say Tsunoda. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's same here. I think I'll go with Tsunoda.
Two great and not so great minds think alike. Incredible.
But
yes,
I'm going to leave you guys with a question. With all this obsession with overtaking that Formula One has, I wonder why Formula One keeps coming back to a circuit where it is statistically so difficult to overtake at.
Don't you dare make them question their choices. They have made a good decision for once. Don't put that thought in their head, at least until 2030 or whatever it might be. Don't. Let's keep this race as is. But that's going to be the theme of the weekend. The love that Imola really gets from all of us, and that is going to be such a fun thing to watch. As we mentioned early on, watch the sessions and just watch the cars flying past here. This is going to be so much fun. And surely it's going to be a fun weekend when Carlos Sainz gets the win at the end for Ferrari at Imola. See you guys. We'll see you for the Imola GP review rather soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast. Before we ended, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Amazon Music once again for partnering with us on this episode of the podcast.